All right, guys, it is Wednesday, and we are going to start our reading lesson. If you do not have it, you need your notebook. You need to go get 4 or so Post-its. Make sure you have your pencil. If you haven't gotten those things, go ahead and pause it, go get them, and come back before you hit play. All right, welcome back. So I want to bring your attention back to something I mentioned yesterday, but didn't really spend a lot of time on. And it's this chart right here. Making the most of your nonfiction texts. So yesterday I mentioned that all of these things that we've already been doing with nonfiction chapter books are skills that we can use when we're doing research with nonfiction text, whether it's with newspapers, magazines, videos, if we're looking at encyclopedia articles. And so I just want to take a second to go through some of these steps and remind us of how, or show us how we can use it with our nonfiction research. So when we're looking at a nonfiction text, we want to make sure we orient ourselves with the text. We review the front cover and the table of contents. Look at the front matter. Okay, so let's try that with an article that I have pulled aside for my second article. The second article I chose to read looks like this: The Battle Over GMOs. If this looks familiar, it's because I actually had you guys put it in your own notebook so we could look at it together. So the first part wants us to look at the front cover and the table of contents and read the introduction. Well, we can't do that because there is no front cover. There is no introduction. There's no table of contents. Does that mean we skip it? Well, let's think. Is there a way we can adapt those things to looking at this article? Well, yeah. Maybe we can't read the front cover, but we can look at the headings. We can look at the subheadings. So let's look at some of the things that we're noticing. So for my title, it says The Battle Over GMOs. So this right here, I'm going to go ahead and write a little arrow, and I'm going to have you guys do the same thing. Looks like it's going to be talking about an argument because it uses that word battle. So if I know I'm talking about a battle over GMOs, I'm probably going to be talking about two sides to an argument. What I'm also noticing is lots of pictures. So I'm just going to put some stars by these pictures. And I'm going to notice, I'm going to put this right here, pictures of everyday food. Sorry, my handwriting's terrible today. Pictures of everyday food. Soda, apples, cereal, pizza, corn. Most of us probably eat most of those foods. This word frankenfoods I brought up yesterday. Is that supposed to be like Frankenstein? I'm going to put Frankenstein with a question mark. Are GMOs the answer to feeding a hungry world, or frankenfoods that put the environment and us at risk? Okay, so let's look at the other headings. I don't think we know enough. That's probably going to be like the cons, the argument against. A boon to farmers. Let's start with this word boon. What is a boon? I'm going to put that in a question mark right there. I see this picture right here. This says a salmon genetically modified to grow fast next to a regular salmon, roughly the same age. So I don't know if you can tell because this is kind of a dark picture, but there's like a little salmon right here and a bigger salmon right here. So I guess this is going to be showing me the GMO and non-GMO salmon. Okay. Ooh, Chipotle. I know a lot about Chipotle. GMO free last year. So, sorry guys. I know this is going to be something about an argument. I can kind of tell from some of the things I'm already seeing. One thing I do notice that the author's already done is included a lot of things that look familiar to me. Let's go back and see what else we're supposed to be doing to make the most of our nonfiction texts. Noticing fascinating parts, okay. Preparing for rich conversations. I think some of the fascinating parts I'm going to notice and talk about are some of those, like I said, familiar things. Soda, Chipotle, pizza, apples. I think that that's going to be a point that the author is going to bring up with us. Possible central ideas. I think I've already done that. I've kind of noticed. I think there's going to be talking about an argument or why they're good or bad. Okay, as we read, rethinking our central ideas and considering how embedded stories are connected to central ideas and asking how might this part fit with what came before. So, yesterday as a reminder, I read this article to kind of build my background knowledge and got an idea of what it meant to use genetic engineering, which genetic engineering is what GMOs are. Genetically engineered foods or organisms. Mostly foods, but we'll talk about other things that are genetically engineered. Now that I know a little bit about genetic engineering, I'm going to be able to go into this article having a better understanding of what I'm looking at. So, let's talk. Looking at this cover. GMOs on your plate. Many popular foods and drinks contain genetically modified organisms. Corn. More than 90% of corn planted in the U.S. is genetically modified to fight off insects and survive herbicides sprayed to kill weeds. Okay, that makes sense. It's to make it so it lasts longer so it doesn't die in the field. Pizza. Some animal-derived ingredients in pizza, like cheese and meat, contain GMOs if the animals were fed genetically modified corn, soy, or alfalfa. Okay, that makes sense. So maybe pizza itself isn't necessarily GMO, but parts of it are GMOs. Soda. Most sodas are made with high fructose corn syrup, which is likely to come from genetically modified corn, or sugar, which is likely made of genetically modified sugar beets. Okay. Apples. The U.S. government recently approved a genetically engineered apple that doesn't brown after being sliced or bruised. You know what? That makes sense because I know my kids get apples with Happy Meals a lot, and I've noticed that those apples in that package must have something on them because they're not brown, and I know when I slice an apple at home for them, it turns brown if they leave it sitting on the table for a while. So that makes sense. They changed it so it doesn't look brown. Why might they do that? Well, I know for my kids, they don't like to eat them once they turn a little bit brown or even that darker yellow. So I guess it's to make it look more appealing. Cereal. Kellogg's and General Mills are among cereal makers that have acknowledged using GMOs in some of their products. Any cereal may include genetically modified ingredients like corn, soy, sugar made from genetically engineered crops. Okay, so I'm kind of picking up the gist that a lot of food, if it's not a GMO itself, contains ingredients or parts of ingredients that might be genetically modified. So it sounds like maybe this is even a bigger topic than we were already realizing. So now that we're kind of realizing the central idea here, this battle over GMOs might have to do with GMOs being so common or so popular. Let's read on and see if that kind of idea or prediction is correct. So I'm going to read, I'm starting up here. I'm not going to zoom this in because you guys have this in your notebook and you should be looking at it right now. The battle over GMOs. Are GMOs the answer to feeding a hungry world? Sorry, I'm still on this part. Or frankenfoods that put the environment and us at risk. So now I'm here. Thousands of people recently took to the streets in 400 cities worldwide. The cause of their anger? Not oppressive governments, unemployment, or income inequality, but apples that don't brown when sliced, corn that's bred to fight off insects. In short, GMOs, genetically modified organisms. In Los Angeles, protesters chanted, "Hell no, GMO." In Strasbourg, France, demonstrators held a minute of silence in front of the European Parliament. And in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, people accused GMO producers of bioterrorism. Well, that's a pretty hard word. Man, those are some pretty deep things to be saying. Like, people are having a really strong reaction to this, I feel like. Let's continue reading. GMOs are organisms whose DNA has been combined with a gene from an unrelated species to produce a desired trait. Some crops are genetically modified to survive herbicide sprays that kill weeds. Okay, so that makes sense. We know we spray things on weeds in order to get them from eating crops. So if you just spray a herbicide and it's meant to kill a crop or a plant, there's a chance it could kill the crop itself. So some crops are made so they can resist that. Okay. Others are engineered to be more nutritious. A pink pineapple awaiting U.S. government approval has the same antioxidant that makes tomatoes red and may help prevent cancer. In November, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved the first genetically modified animal, a salmon engineered to grow to market size in about half the time as a regular salmon. But GMOs haven't been popular lately. Only 37% of Americans think they're safe to eat, according to the Pew Research Center. McDonald's recently refused to use a new genetically modified potato that produces less of a cancer-causing chemical when fried. Chipotle dropped GMOs from its U.S. offerings, and General Mills stopped using GMOs in original Cheerios after a year-long campaign by environmentalists. Okay, are your minds kind of like overflowing right now? There's a lot of kind of thought-provoking things I just read about. Some of the things that I'm like really honing in on is like, it's kind of making me feel torn. I understand why it's important for us not to kill crops when we're spraying herbicides to make the crops grow more plentiful. And I understand like why it might be important to include different types of antioxidants in a pineapple. I know I like pineapples better than tomatoes. And if it's going to help fight cancer, it'd be great for me to have all those extra nutrients in that pineapple. All those things sound really good. Growing a salmon super fast, it's going to make it easier to get salmon. It's going to make salmon cheaper, which is going to make me happy because I don't buy a lot of salmon because it's expensive. But at the same time, I have like a red flag flying right now because the fact that McDonald's doesn't want to sell GMO foods tells me that maybe there's more to it than like what this this pro list here at the beginning is telling me. All right, we're about 1/3 of the way through an article, and we got a general sense of a central idea that GMOs might not be very popular. As we're going forward, we need to focus on what an author's point is. What kind of bias do we see coming from them? What is the general position they want us to have at the end of this article? So I'm going to keep reading, and I want you to think. How is the author teaching me that GMOs aren't popular? All right. I'm sorry, I'm right here, where it's, I don't think we know enough. We predicted that this was going to tell us some of those cons. While some see GMOs as frankenfoods that hurt the environment and others see them as the most promising solution to feeding the world's population, which is expected to skyrocket from 7 billion today to about 10 billion by 2050. Wow. The government agencies regulating GMOs in the U.S. say they're safe. But some scientists and consumers argue that GMOs haven't been around long enough for us to know their long-term health effects. We're putting genes into crops that have never been in this food supply before, said Doug Guerin-Sherman, a scientist for the Center of Food Safety, a non-profit organization opposing GMOs. I don't think we know enough. I'm actually going to pause there for a second. So, I guess I was totally wrong here. Like, this made it sound like it was going to tell me that GMOs are bad, but here I'm focusing in on that where it says that we're going to have like a big boom in the population so we'll be able to feed people. Interesting. Sounds like that's a pro for GMOs. All right, I'm going to pause there. Today, as you're reading, I want you doing the same work. I want you thinking about author's purpose. I want you to thinking about author's position, but I want you to still keep trying to pick up information on your subtopics. Today, I noticed a couple of things as I was reading, and just to remind you on my research, the subtopics I chose were kinds of GMOs, disagreements about GMOs, what GMOs are, and how genetic engineering works. A couple of the things I'm noticing, or I read about, is that GMOs make food more resilient to feed a growing population. So when they talked about making corn, so that it doesn't get killed by weed killers, or when it talks about like the salmon growing larger, I feel like that might go under kinds of GMOs. Like what the GMO's purpose is. Many, or maybe would that go under how GMOs work? I'm going to stick it here. Like I said, you can put it on your own. It doesn't have to be perfect. Many companies don't want to use GMOs, and I'm going to put on there McDonald's, because that should be a red flag, because McDonald's is not really known for having quality food. So I'm going to put that one under disagreements about GMOs. And then there's another one I picked up just from the front that wasn't necessarily something that was stated, but where it says that I put many common foods are made with GMOs or GMO products from all those pictures. So how it works, what GMOs are. I'm going to put this under kinds of GMOs because I think that that's talking about where you would find a GMO. Okay, so today you are reading 2 articles or 2 videos, just 2 pieces of information from your research document that you guys have in your drive. Preview things first, look at the pictures, read the captions. There is one thing that I do want to bring up to you. Some of these things sound very, like sometimes when I'm reading, I wonder why certain things aren't mentioned. And so what I want you guys to think about doing whenever you come across nonfiction is I want you to check one thing for me. And that is, when was this written? If you look on this one, sorry, I had to find it, at the bottom corner, this was printed in the New York Times on February 8th in 2016. So this is about 6 years old. So some of the big issues that we see nowadays, especially in something like a science-driven topic, is going to change a lot. So it's something I need to keep in mind. The information that I read here still is factual, but I need to remember that it happened in 2016. So there might be research out there, or there might be opinions out there that have changed or grown. Please make sure you check the date on all things, especially if you're reading something science or political. So if you're reading about like immigration, the pipeline, those are kind of more political. If you're reading about nuclear energy, if you're reading about wildfires, those are a little bit more scientific. That information, the date on there is going to be really important to keep in mind as you're reading and coming up with some of the central ideas you're seeing in an article. Okay, so just to recap, reading 2 things, putting it in your research, your Post-its. Probably need a couple Post-its, or at least 1 Post-it maybe per heading. You might have more than 2. You should at least have 2. You might have more than 2 though. If you need to add a subtopic, feel free to add a subtopic. You might have a subtopic, like I have a subtopic that we haven't even hit on yet, how genetic engineering works. Doesn't mean I'm not going to get to it, because I'm only a couple articles in, but that's okay. When you are finished, you are doing your independent reading, so you can put your notebook up. If you have not already, make sure you have your status filled out. If you have any questions, you guys can email me or comment on the link. And I hope you guys are doing great. And remember, you're working for an incentive on Friday. All right, guys. I'll see you later.